I was 15 years old the first time I realized adults could value trophies more than lives. The tornado warning blared through the pool's ancient PA system, that shrill, metallic voice announcing, all outdoor activities are suspended immediately. Seek shelter now. Every other swim team scattered, scrambling for their bags, coaches herding them toward the locker rooms. But not us. Our coach, Ms. Carter, just stood at the bottom of the ladder, arms crossed, like a guard blocking the exit. Nobody moves, she barked. We've got regionals in 4 days. I treaded water in my lane, staring up at her in disbelief. Coach, everyone else is getting out. Shouldn't we, follow protocol? Her face twisted with that familiar rage, the vein in her forehead bulging. The team at Westfield calls us the charity pool. You want to prove them right by quitting now. The sky above wasn't just grey anymore, it had shifted into this eerie, greenish-black bruise of a color. I could feel the air getting heavier, pressing on my chest. My gut told me this wasn't just a thunderstorm. But Carter wasn't budging. Back in the water, she snapped. 2100s on the 130. Move. We obeyed, because that's what we always did. She didn't just coach us, she owned us. 2 minutes later, the wind started to howl. Not regular wind, but this low, guttural sound that made the chain-link fence behind the bleachers rattle like it was about to tear free. My ears popped from the sudden drop in pressure. Coach, look at the clouds, I tried again, pushing hair out of my eyes. That's rotation. That's a wall cloud. You've got 2 choices, she shot back, keep swimming or do push-ups on deck. Pick. Marissa, our captain, tried next. My mom's a lawyer, she said firmly. She told me state law says we have to evacuate during a tornado warning. That's when Carter lost it. Her voice cracked, shrill with something that wasn't just anger, it was desperation. Do you know what my ex-husband's daughter told me last week? She said the Westfield team calls us weak. Calls us poor. And you want to prove them right. The words hung in the air like poison. We just floated there, stunned. Our coach was risking 20 kids' lives because of some gossip. That's when Mr. Keene, the janitor, came sprinting out of the gym, waving his arms. Everyone inside. Rotation spotted 2 miles out. Get out of here, Carl. Carter barked back. We're training. I'll never forget the way he froze. Looked at us. Looked at her. Then just shook his head and walked away. Like he already knew nothing he did would matter. And honestly? He wasn't wrong. Everyone at school knew Principal Dalton always sided with Carter. She was the best coach in the state, the woman who could drag a no-name public school to the finals. Nobody wanted to lose that, not the board, not the parents, not even the other staff. So they let her do whatever she wanted. And now we were stuck in the pool with a storm tearing the sky apart. The wind gusts grew so violent they ripped water straight out of the pool, sheets of it splashing across the deck. Leaves and bits of paper swirled around like we were inside a blender. Kelsey, a tiny freshman who barely weighed 90 pounds, clung to the lane line, crying. My ears hurt, so bad. I feel like I'm gonna throw up. That's called working hard, Carter screamed. Westfield doesn't take breaks. But Kelsey wasn't exaggerating. My own ears throbbed, like we were on a plane dropping 10,000 feet in a heartbeat. And then it happened, Rose turned to the gutter and puked. Violent, heaving. That sound, the sound everyone describes like a freight train, started rolling toward us. Louder. Closer. My chest went tight with panic. This is insane, someone yelled. The only insane thing here, Carter shrieked back, is your attitude. The equipment shed exploded. The roof, corrugated metal, ripped free like a frisbee and spun high into the air before vanishing into the storm. Emergency lights flickered on across the facility even though the power hadn't gone out yet. I turned toward lane 2. My little brother, Adam, was there. His lips had gone pale purple, his entire body shaking. Not from cold. From terror. I knew right then I didn't care about regionals, scholarships, or threats. I was done. I swam to the ladder, hauled myself up, and started climbing. Touch that ladder, Carter roared, and you're off the team. No regionals. No scholarship. Your future ends right here. I looked at her, water streaming down my face. My hands clung to the rails like they were the only solid thing left in the world. Then I'm off the team, I said. I shoved past her. She grabbed a fistful of my wet hair, yanking so hard tears sprang to my eyes. Get back in the pool, she snarled. I tore free, scrambled onto the deck, and turned back to the others. Nobody's coming to save us. Get out. Now. And that was the moment everything broke. 20 kids surged toward the ladder at once, chaos spilling across the deck. Carter's voice was still cutting through the storm, shrieking about weakness, about how we were ruining our futures. But we weren't listening anymore. Because outside the fence, the tornado had just touched down. Cars were flipping in the parking lot like toys. And that wasn't even the worst of it. We sprinted across the deck, bare feet slapping against the slippery tile, lungs burning with chlorine and fear. Adam was right beside me, his hand brushing mine every few steps like he was terrified I'd vanish if he let go. Behind us, Coach Carter was still screaming, about regionals, about weakness, about Westfield, like the storm outside was less dangerous than her losing control of us. The sky looked wrong. Not just dark, alive. It pulsed and churned, threads of black twisting around the sickly green like some monster trying to claw its way through. We hit the doors to the gym, and that's when the power finally died. Total darkness, except for the red glow of the emergency exit signs. The sound of the tornado outside roared so loud it drowned out our own gasps for breath. Basement, someone yelled, and we all shoved toward the stairwell. The 20 of us crammed into the narrow hallway, shoving, tripping, sobbing. Rose slipped again, I caught her elbow, yanking her upright before the tide of bodies trampled her. Kelsey was shrieking for her mom, her small voice piercing the chaos. We slammed into the basement just as the whole building shook. The ground beneath us vibrated like a passing train, dust raining from the ceiling. I clutched Adam against me as we collapsed in a corner, 20 wet, terrified teenagers trying to fold themselves small. And then, silence. Not total silence, the storm still roared above us, metal groaning, windows shattering, but inside that basement, we could only hear the sound of our own panicked breathing. That's when Carter appeared in the doorway. Her hair was plastered to her face, eyes wild, a fresh gash bleeding across her temple. But her voice was calm. Too calm. You'll thank me one day, she said, her tone flat. This is how champions are made. By pushing through fear. Nobody moved. Nobody answered. We just stared at her like she'd finally revealed what we'd all secretly known. She wasn't trying to save us. She was trying to break us. 40 minutes later, firefighters pulled her out of the mangled equipment room where debris had trapped her. She was still muttering about commitment, still calling us weak between chattering teeth. And somehow, when the dust settled, she had already spun the story. According to the official record, we'd evacuated immediately. According to the automated message every parent got that night, their kids had been safely inside the building as soon as the warning sounded. Except that wasn't true. If we'd stayed in that pool even 5 minutes longer, the fire department said, we'd have been sucked straight into the funnel. I tried to tell my mom when she picked me up, but she just kept whispering, "You're safe, you're safe, you're safe," her hand shaking on the steering wheel. Nobody wanted to talk about what had really happened. Nobody wanted to admit how close we'd been. But in the weeks that followed, things didn't add up. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that green-black sky, Adam's purple lips, the roof of the shed spinning into the air like a toy. Adam had it worse, he'd wake up gasping, convinced he was still in the water with the wind screaming above us. At school, people treated us differently. Some kids wanted to hear every detail, like we were survivors of some horror movie. Others avoided us completely, like trauma might rub off on them if they got too close. And then there was Carter. She came back with a bandage on her head and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She congratulated us on our courage under pressure, twisting the nightmare into some inspirational speech about resilience. I thought that was the worst part. That she was going to pretend none of it happened. But then, one morning in chemistry class, the door opened. Two strangers walked in, a man and a woman in dark suits, badges clipped to their belts. "Rebecca Hill?" the woman asked. Her voice was professional, but there was a weight to it. Every head turned toward me. My stomach dropped. "This is about Coach Carter," she said. "We're with the FBI, Financial Crimes Division. We need to speak with you. Privately." The room went dead silent. And that's when I realized the tornado was only the beginning. The walk to the office felt like an execution. Sneakers squeaking against polished tile, every eye burning into me as I passed. The two agents didn't say much until we reached the conference room. The woman, Agent Quinn, opened a laptop while the man, Martinez, leaned against the wall like he'd rather be anywhere else. "We've been investigating your coach for several weeks," Quinn said. "What happened during the tornado brought everything into the open, but the financial irregularities go back years." She spun the screen toward me. Bank statements filled the page, highlighted sections everywhere. I froze. I recognized the names. Parents from our team. That $500 payment. Quinn tapped the screen. Kayla West's mom. Supposedly for a training camp that never existed. This one, $1,200 for new lane ropes. Never purchased. This one, private lessons your teammate swears she never received. The room felt smaller by the second. "We need to know everyone who was in that pool the night of the tornado," Quinn said. So I listed them. 23 names. Kids who almost drowned in wind while Carter screamed at us to keep swimming. By lunch, the agents were pulling swimmers out of class one by one. Marissa left history. Tommy got called from gym. Kayla broke down before they even said her name. And that's when I realized the tornado wasn't just an accident. It was a crack in the mask. And behind it was something much worse. That night, our kitchen turned into command central. My mom was on the phone with Kayla's mother, her face getting more shocked with every word. $1,500? For what exactly? I could hear Mrs. West on the other end, voice high and furious. Special training sessions, she said. Except Kayla had never gotten them. Never even heard about them. My mom hung up and immediately started dialing other parents. Rose's dad. Tommy's mom. One call after another, each revealing another scam. Another missing check. Another lie. And in my chest, a memory started to burn. I was 11, standing in line for new swimsuits with the rest of the team. Carter had her clipboard out, making notes while parents handed her envelopes. When it was my mom's turn, she slipped her an envelope too, her hands trembling like they always did around authority figures. Carter smiled at her, sharp and thin. Of course, Mrs. Hill. Every bit helps. I remember tugging on Mom's sleeve later, whispering, "Why do we have to pay extra? Isn't the school supposed to cover it?" Mom hushed me, eyes darting around like we might get in trouble just for asking. That was the first time I felt it, that gnawing suspicion that maybe the rules didn't apply to people like Coach Carter. That maybe she was untouchable. And now, sitting at the kitchen table with phone calls echoing into the night, I knew I'd been right. By morning, the group chat was exploding. Screenshots of bank statements, Venmo charges, receipts for things that didn't exist. $3,000 for a recruiting video, Rose typed. Never got one. $2,000 for special training equipment, Marcus's mom wrote. It never showed up. Swim camp cancelled, no refund, another parent added. Each ping on my phone was another gut punch. And while we were unraveling Carter's lies, the school was closing ranks. I heard Principal Dalton before I saw him. His voice carried down the hallway, sharp and defensive. You can't just rifle through confidential files, he was yelling. Agent Quinn's reply was calm. Actually, we can. Federal warrant. Would you like to see it again? Through the office doorway, I caught a glimpse of Dalton's face, red, sweaty, fists clenched. The same man who had typed "all safe" while we were still in the pool was now fighting harder to protect Carter than to protect us. That's when I felt it deep in my gut. This wasn't just about one coach. This was bigger. Way bigger. And we hadn't even scratched the surface yet. The parent meeting was supposed to start at 7 o'clock. By 6:30, the auditorium was already overflowing. Voices bounced off the walls, angry, confused, defensive. How did nobody notice? One parent shouted. Where was the oversight? Another snapped. But then Tommy's dad stood up, booming over the chaos. This is ridiculous. Coach Carter made our kids tough. Winners. Now you all want to crucify her because she pushed them hard? She pushed them into a tornado, Mrs. West shot back. That's an exaggeration, he sneered. My son says the danger is being blown out of proportion. Half these kids are just being dramatic. The room split instantly. Half the parents clapping, the other half yelling back. One woman was sobbing in the aisle, holding up receipts Carter had stolen money with. Another dad kept insisting Carter was the best thing that ever happened to their children. The school board sat at the front, pale and sweating, looking like they'd rather vanish through the floor. And all I could think was, these were the people who were supposed to protect us. And they were tearing each other apart instead. 3 days later, news vans lined up outside the rec center, cameras pointed at us as we climbed dripping out of the water. Most of us tried to duck past them. But Marissa, quiet, careful Marissa, stopped right in front of the biggest camera. Her hair still wet, her voice steady. You want to know what happened, she said. Coach Carter cared more about beating Westfield than keeping us alive. She watched debris flying past and told us to keep swimming. She heard the sirens and called us weak for wanting to get out. The words cut sharper than any headline. And this time, there was no denying it. That night, Agent Quinn called my mom. Her voice was clipped but urgent. We found something bigger, she said. Carter's been billing the district for equipment, then billing parents for the exact same items. Double-dipping everything. 6 years' worth. Over $200,000. I remember sitting there at the kitchen table, staring at the grain of the wood, my stomach hollow. $200,000. While our pool had broken lane lines and cracked tiles, while kids like Kelsey's mom worked double shifts to pay extra fees. Carter hadn't just lied. She'd stolen futures. The next day, Tommy's dad was waiting by my car after practice. Not Tommy. Just his dad. Arms crossed, face twisted with anger. You're ruining a good woman's life, he spat. Coach Carter made something of you kids. Gave you discipline. Structure. And this is how you repay her. She almost got us killed, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Drama. Pure drama. You kids are soft, just like she always said. Can't handle a little rough weather. Before I could even move, my dad appeared. He stepped between us, his voice low but deadly calm. Back away from my daughter. Now. Tommy's dad held his stare a beat too long before turning, muttering about ungrateful brats and ruined futures. I thought that would be the end of it. But that was just the beginning. 2 nights later, we gathered in Marissa's basement. 15 of us, sitting cross-legged on carpet that smelled like chlorine and pizza. Rose wasn't there, she'd been rushed to urgent care with chest pains. The stress had finally crushed her. Marissa looked around the circle. We need to decide what we're doing. Together. As a team. My dad wants me to stop talking to the FBI, Tommy admitted, voice low. He says Carter made us better swimmers. That we're being ungrateful. She nearly killed us, Kelsey snapped, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. That's not coaching. That's abuse. We went around one by one. Some of us scared, some furious, all of us broken in different ways. And then, slowly, the hand started going up. 1, 2, 15. Unanimous. We would tell the truth. All of it. No matter what it cost. That same night, Adam woke the whole house screaming. I found him tangled in his sheets, sobbing, gasping for air. I can't breathe, he cried. The air's too heavy. It's pulling me up. Mom held him, rocking back and forth, whispering that he was safe. But his wide, terrified eyes said otherwise. And then, between hiccuping breaths, he asked the question I couldn't shake. Why didn't the adults protect us? I looked at Mom. She looked at me. And in her eyes, I saw my own anger reflected back. Because that was the real question, wasn't it? Where were the adults who should have stopped all this before it ever began? 2 weeks after the tornado, we started giving official statements at the courthouse. They brought us in one at a time, cameras recording, court reporters typing every word. Coach Carter's lawyer sat across from me in an expensive suit, flipping through a legal pad like he was preparing to dismantle a kid. He didn't interrupt as I described the sky turning green-black, the sound of the shed exploding, Adam's lips purple with fear. Not yet. He was saving his attacks for later. 3 days later, the letters came. Delivered by certified mail. Heavy envelopes with complicated legal language that boiled down to one thing: shut up, or we'll sue you. Carter's lawyer claimed we were exaggerating. That we were soft, vengeful kids trying to smear a tough but dedicated coach. He threatened defamation suits against us and our parents if we kept talking. Instead of scaring us quiet, it did the opposite. Kids who'd been too afraid to speak suddenly wanted to testify. Marcus, who barely said 10 words about that night, called the FBI and talked for 2 hours. Sarah convinced her parents that silence was what Carter was counting on. Even kids who hadn't been in the pool started coming forward with their own stories. And when the news went national, former swimmers from Indiana and Michigan sent in theirs too. Same patterns. Same cruelty. Same obsession with destroying rivals. We weren't just one team anymore. We were a chorus. The school board tried to meet quietly, but 300 parents showed up, furious. One mother read from her daughter's journal, "Coach says I'll never make college if I don't lose 10 pounds. I'm already underweight, but she says doctors don't understand athletes." A father held up photos of his son's frostbitten hands from January practices Carter had called character building. Another mom sobbed into the microphone, "My daughter wakes up gasping, thinking she's drowning in wind." By the time the district attorney held a press conference, the charges stacked like bricks. 32 counts of theft. 18 counts of wire fraud. 23 counts of child endangerment. Together, the DA said, these charges ensure that Ms. Carter will never hold a position of trust over children again. That afternoon, we watched live as officers knocked on her front door. She came out still screaming, about weakness, about Westfield, about how we'd betrayed her. Even as they cuffed her, she was yelling at the cameras, "These kids are soft. This is what's wrong with this generation." And somehow, that was almost worse than the tornado, realizing that she'd never see herself as the problem. But the corruption didn't stop with her. Security footage surfaced, Principal Dalton typing the all-safe message while watching the tornado out his window. Emails between him and the athletic director, praising Carter's aggressive but effective methods. One of them had written, just 2 days after a lightning incident, "She wins. That's what matters." Dalton got dragged out of his office under investigation. For once, he wasn't the one in control. But if that felt like victory, it didn't last. Because Rose collapsed in the middle of English class, her heart rate spiking in a full-blown panic attack. They wheeled her out on a stretcher, her mom clutching her hand, both of them crying. Later, Rose typed us a message from the hospital, "Don't stop. Keep fighting. What happened to us was wrong. Don't let her win. That was when we decided to go fully public. No more whispers. No more letting them control the story. Within days, videos of our testimonies went viral. Millions of views. Comments pouring in from swimmers across the country saying, "This happened to me too." We weren't alone anymore. 3 months after the tornado, the trial ended. Carter was convicted on all counts: theft, fraud, endangerment. 8 years in prison. Lifetime ban from working with minors. Even at sentencing, she stood up and screamed, "They'll never amount to anything. They're too weak." But nobody listened this time. She was just another voice echoing down a hallway that wasn't hers anymore. The team that was left, just 12 of us, gathered at the rec center with our new coach, Ms. Bernard. She looked us in the eyes and said, "Your safety comes first. Always. Your health comes second. Winning comes third." Half the team cried right there on the pool deck. Adam, who hadn't touched water since the tornado, gripped my hand and whispered, "Can I try?" Step by shaky step, we climbed down the ladder together. The water was warm. Safe. Different. He ducked his head under, came up gasping, not from fear this time, but relief. "I did it," he whispered. Then louder, "I did it." For the first time in months, I remembered why I loved swimming. Not for scholarships. Not for trophies. Just for that feeling of being weightless, held up by something bigger than myself. But sometimes, late at night, when storms roll across town, I still hear Carter's voice in my head. "Keep swimming. Don't be weak." And then I remember the truth. We weren't weak. We saved ourselves.